The first proposal to manage conflict of interest is a zero tolerance policy. And I think a zero tolerance policy is primarily valuable from the perspective of appealing to or winning public trust. You know, the argument goes that you can either choose to do research or choose to have financial relationships with the companies that sponsor research. And you need to make that choice, because to do both raises significant questions about your interests in conducting the study with integrity and with the protection and safety of your research subjects in mind. And I think it's a reasonable argument to an extent, because in fact, as it is, there are enormous pressures on investigators, apart from the financial ones, that have to do with prestige and reputation. To an extent, investigators are all already entrepreneurs, meaning they have to run small clinical trials businesses. And the pressure to recruit and retain research subjects, to complete studies, to meet quotas and deadlines requested by drug companies in clinical trials, these are all things which already, I think, place the integrity of the process and the safety of research subjects at risk. At least recent history has proven that to be the case. So those are my perspectives on the zero tolerance policy. The other approach, of course, is a modest one, and it talks about attempts to manage conflicts of interest. And I think, in fact, it's a meaningful approach to the problem. It's focused less on appearance of conflict and looks at conflicts which really have the likelihood of impacting on investigator behavior. You know, the fact that someone may hold equity interest in a large publicly traded pharmaceutical industry shouldn't in and of itself disqualify that person from conducting research for that company. Because in fact, it's hard to imagine that the investigator is in a position to influence that holding or stock price. Again, if we're talking about multi-center, double-blind, controlled trials, the ability of any particular investigator to meaningfully influence that outcome is remote. So the idea of a remotely possible speculative investment in this way, I think, suggests that management is a good approach. And the way that management should occur is that in a case-specific way, after disclosure, a conflict of interest committee can decide whether or not the financial holding actually does represent a risk to the integrity of the study or a risk to the research subjects in any way. Managing conflict of interest, I think, is a wise policy, and it also permits series of industry academic affiliations, both for research and education, which I think are critical these days for the advancement of science. And to prohibit that, to not allow academics to be involved in for-profit enterprises, I think puts the academic establishment at some risk, and I think accomplishes really very little in the way of enhancing safety or promoting integrity.